All right, so today we're going to talk about the third leg, the personal savings part of it, and the retirement. And so there's this individual retirement arrangement, or IRAs, that the government allows you to do to save money on your own account. So we looked at what the government can do for you, the federal government. Then we looked at what your workplace can do for you. That was in last class. And today we're going to look at what you can do for yourself. And so, under this IRA arrangement, you can put stuff into your these individual retirement accounts. IRA contribution limits. Right now, for 2014, it's $5,500 for everybody in this room that you can put in per year, and that lowers your taxable income by that much. So there's an incentive for you to. So this is pre-tax money, which means that this is going to lower your taxable income by that much, and you can put in this money, and this will obviously grow tax deferred, and we'll talk about all this because there's a variant to this now that I think is advantageous for young people. That's works better. We'll talk about that. But this is sort of the way things work, and the idea is that it gets you to incentivizes you to put money in a retirement account and have it grow tax-free, so that's quicker growth. And then, of course, under the traditional arrangement, you have taxes due when you break open or look, when you're allowed to, which is at 60. Under current rules, you're allowed to take money out, and at that point, there is, under the traditional arrangement, there is a large tax burden due because it'll be a large amount, and all of it is funded with pre-tax money, which means you due taxes at that point. And at that point, given the amount, it's usually that you're going to be at the highest tax bracket just because of the amounts involved. So almost 40% under current rules of tax will go. So if you had $1 million portfolio, then $400,000 will be in taxes. So you'll get to keep $600,000 and $400,000 in taxes, roughly. Now, question is, when you are able, so if you make too much money, you're still allowed to put the money in. Question is, are you allowed to get a tax deduction out of it? Okay, and so you can put in the money, and it'll grow tax deferred over the time that it's kept. But the question is, you are not always allowed to take it as a taxable deduction. If you make too much money, for example, and what is too much we'll define, you are not allowed to take a tax deduction out of it because the idea is that you're making too much money and you don't need the additional benefit. So under current rules, deduction phases out. So if you're an individual filer, when your adjusted gross income is between $60,000 and $70,000, so below $60,000, you're able to take full benefit of it. Between 60 and 70, partial tax deduction. Over 70, no tax deduction. If you're a married person filing jointly, then the range is $96,000 to $116,000. So basically, the bottom line here is that the numbers change, but idea is if you make too much money, the government determines that you don't need this additional tax benefit, and so you don't get it. Okay, so again, traditional IRA, no income restrictions. The question is, so anybody can open an IRA account without restriction. The question is, can you take it as a tax deduction? That's where your income matters, what we just talked about right now. So it's open to anyone. You just don't get the tax benefit. So it's like a long-term investment. Same rules go. You put your money into CDs, or not CDs, I'm sorry, mutual funds and ETFs or whatever you want. You can change those on the fly. There are certain cases, exceptional cases, where early withdrawal penalties may not apply, and some of these are because of the IRA owner's death or disability and things like that. So these are the list of, I'm not going to read through them, I'll let you, I know you can read. So So these are the conditions under which the government will allow you early withdrawal without penalty. Because if you break into your IRA account prematurely before you're 60, then there is not only do you have to pay back taxes over the entire amount, but there's a 10% penalty on top of that. So, but under these kind of cases, you are exempt from the from paying penalty. You'll still have to pay taxes, but no penalties. So tax you have to pay. The rule is very simple. Okay, at the bottom, I mean, we can sort of quibble here all we want, but what the government wants to do is the government gives you a pre-tax benefit for some of us. And so whenever you break into that account, you have to pay your back taxes. There's no getting around that. Okay? So when it's pre-tax money that's going into retirement, there's always taxes due. Okay? Question is when. Question is when. It's not if, but when. That's the issue. All right. So I'll let you look at those. So here is a variant on the IRA that was announced, that came into being about 15 years ago, called the Roth IRA, which is a variant on the traditional IRA, which we just talked about. Roth IRA, as it turns out, is for people starting out now, like yourselves. Roth IRA clearly dominates the IRA landscape, and this is the one that's preferred over the traditional IRA. Obviously, people before 1999, people who started their retirement planning before 1999, didn't have this option. So all they had were the traditional IRAs, which was what we just discussed. Pre-tax money, it grows, then at the end, when you break into it, when you're allowed to at 60, you have a large tax to pay for all the pre-tax accumulation. So everything you have in that account is taxable at your current tax rates, income rates, and which, given the large amount, you'll be at the top tax bracket, which is almost 40%, which is what you're going to incur with that. Here, the difference here is that Roth IRA is funded with after-tax money. So you are essentially paying taxes now, and then putting a Roth IRA money in after your taxes. So the money that you're putting in the Roth IRA, you've already paid taxes on. And therefore, the government is much more open about that money than in the former case. The government is much more relaxed about Roth IRA money because you've already paid taxes on it. And that's a big difference, is that, so, and the advantage is at 60, or whenever it is after 60 that you decide to get into the account, you do not have any taxes at that point. You do not have any taxes. So if you have $1 million generated at that point in your Roth IRA, that entire $1 million is yours tax-free. Because, well, it's not tax-free, really, because you've paid taxes on it as you go along. So you've put money, after-tax money into it, and therefore you are not taxable, or the account is not taxable at the end. So and that's a big thing, big plus, because, and we'll talk about when is it better to have a traditional IRA versus Roth IRA. But understand this, that for most of us, or almost all of us in this room, when you have an upward sloping income graph, which is that our incomes will increase over the lifetime. So it's going to be less earlier on, and it's going to be more later. If you have an upward sloping income graph, then clearly Roth IRA is superior to traditional IRA, because again, when you have an upward sloping income graph, you're going to be at the highest tax rate towards the end of your life anyway, well, not towards the end of your life, but towards the end of your 50s or early 60s, when this becomes, both of them become viable. And therefore, when it's that kind of a situation, then clearly Roth IRA is better than traditional IRA, as opposed to a different case, which we'll talk about. But Roth IRA has certain very appealing features. One is, of course, there's no tax to be paid at the end. then you can continue. Whereas the traditional IRA, you have to start taking money out of the account by the time you're 70. With the Roth IRA, there's no such pressure. Again, because you've funded it with after-tax money, the government is less concerned with when you can start taking out and all that stuff. So, so here's an example. If you contribute $3,000 to Roth this year and in 3 years it grows to $4,000, you can withdraw money anytime. You can withdraw your own contributions, which are after-tax contributions, anytime you want. So that's another advantage over a traditional IRA, where you are not allowed to touch the money in the account except under those very special circumstances and so on, and that too, there's a limit to how much you can take out. Here, as long as it's your own contribution, not the growth in the account itself, right? So you cannot touch that $3,000 to $4,000, that $1,000 growth in the account. That's not something that you can touch, but the money that you put in, you can take out anytime. Your contributions can come out anytime without any problems, you don't have to do. So it's quite flexible. It's quite flexible in that sense. But if you touch that $1,000 growth before 59 and a half or 60, then you have to pay taxes and penalties on that $1,000. But except that, all your contributions, which are after tax, you can withdraw anytime you want. Obviously, that will lower the amount in the account itself, and that's a risk you take. But that's okay. So obviously, there are limitations again, and this question I get a lot. So under current rules in 2014, the contribution is $5,500. That's what you can pay. Now, people ask, oh, well, if I choose to start both, do I get 55,000 or 5,500 times 2? And the answer is no. You still get $5,500. You can allocate it however you want. For whatever reason, if you decide you need a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, well, your contribution in a given year has to total up to $5,500. That's what you're entitled. Questions, why would you even want to have a traditional IRA? Because we'll talk about it soon with the graph. For most of us, for almost all of us, who will have the more traditional income growth path, which is increasing over time, Roth IRA has been shown to be clearly superior to the traditional vehicle. So the question really, when you look at traditional versus Roth, is that do I want to cut my tax bill now or later, right? So under traditional, you pay your taxes later at 60. Under Roth, you pay your taxes now as you go along and put money, after-tax money in it. And so so here's the graph. So the upward sloping is basically for most of us, right? I think the other one is people who make their become millionaires at 20, 25, the Zuckerbergs of the world. If you make money at a very young age and then you live off of that, Axl Rose maybe, somebody like that. Then it might be worthwhile to have a traditional IRA because your tax rate at 60 might be significantly lower than the tax bracket you're in when you're 25. Under those rare cases of people who have very early success financially, for most of us, Roth is the clear favorite because we have what is called that traditional upward sloping income graph over time, that you're going to make more money as you get older. Any questions that I need to?
So which one is safer?
So the question is, which one is safer to you? There is no such thing. Safer as in risk. It's what you invest in, right? So there is no differential risk between Roth and traditional. The difference is only in the tax implications. One is with after-tax money and the other is pre-tax money. Other than that, your risk is borne by the kind of investments you decide to put your money in, which is what it is. And so there is nothing differentiating between those two types. It's the investment risk that you'll carry through your choices, and that will figure equally in whether it's a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. Can you talk about how to find the best brokerage for opening up? Really, they're so standardized now that there is no such thing as a better brokerage here. They're all standardized. They're all, you can go to a bank and start a broker, Roth IRA, any bank here or wherever you plan to settle or live after graduation. Any of the banks will have it. So it's really a very simple process. It's you go and walk into a bank, find a person behind a desk, and you say, I want to start a Roth IRA. She's going to have you fill out a few forms and things like that, and you're on your way. So it's very simple these days and very standardized. So there's no such thing as a better brokerage versus less better brokerage. When you open a Roth IRA but then make more a year, where you no longer qualify for a Roth IRA. Yeah, I mean, so you can, people's, okay, so that's a good question. So yeah, we always have periods when you can start off and you make less than $70,000 or $60,000. You're single. You're filing single tax rates, and you're qualified to take. If you start a traditional IRA, for example, you get the tax benefit. But then at some point, once you exceed that limit, you're still allowed to contribute. The problem is you cannot get a tax benefit out of it. That's the only difference. So you get the benefits up until the time that your income exceeds those pre-specified limits, and then you are not allowed to take the tax benefit part of it if you have a traditional IRA. So that's basically the only difference. And for most people that's true, because you start off making less money, relatively less money, and therefore you get all these benefits, and then as time goes on and your income or salary increases and you become more senior in your position, then yeah, at some point the tax benefit will evaporate. You won't have those benefits. Yes?
So in that case, like if you do exceed that limit, then is it basically the same thing as just like investing in the market, or are there still advantages?
It's still tax-free growth within it. You're not paying any taxes within it, right? So it's faster growth there. But you're not taking it as a taxable benefit on top anymore. That's the only difference.
Okay.
So yeah, great question. I don't understand, where does your contributions go if they don't carry over year to year? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by carry over.
This is something that was in one of the earlier slides.
So let me look at that part.
Yeah.
So, okay, I know exactly what the question is. Okay, I remember. So yes, I know what you mean. You cannot carry over so let's say, okay, yeah. So let's say you have $5,500 that you are entitled to. So in a given year, you don't fully utilize it. You can't carry that over the next year and say, okay, now, let's say I didn't use $3,000 my limit last year, therefore now, this year I have 55 plus 3,000 carry over from last year. Just like you can do with losses, investment losses, right? As you know, you can take investment losses and you can carry them over year to year in your taxes. You can't do that with retirement. It's year to year. So if you don't take the full advantage in a given year, the full amount that you're entitled to, you cannot carry that over the next year. Next year is still $5,500, not 55 plus what you didn't use the last year. So that's the way the rules are set up. So I think that's what you mean, the question. I'm not sure I understand that question. If we set our tax number to 0 at employment, so we have no taxes, all right, that means we should get all of our money without taxes taken out. I agree. What should we do to invest that no money for that year? You'll have to explain that to me, whoever, I'm not following. So if you can explain that to me, I'll try to answer it. Is Roth IRA the best option for me if my salary? Roth IRA is the best option or better of the two options for you, regardless of how much you make, as long as you believe that your graph, whatever the money is, that's going to be upward sloping. In other words, at 60, you will be at a higher tax bracket than you are at 30, for example. As long as that assumption is true, Roth IRA is the better alternative for you. Okay, so that's sort of the assumption that's critical in that piece. Not how much, whether you make $100,000 a year versus $80,000 versus $70,000 or $150,000. That's not the key here. The key is the relative tax bracket that you project yourself to be in at 60 versus what you are at 30. That's the key thing there. This Wednesday is our last lecture ever, yes. It's the last lecture ever.
Well, if they fail, it's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have other classes, so it's not really your last lecture ever. It's the last lecture ever in this class. Maria's feeling very sentimental because after 5 years, it's time for her to move on as well. So it is. Maria's going to be working for a hedge fund in Chicago, by the way. Yes. So we're all very excited. She's been talking about the Asia desk. She'll be training and be involved for the Asia trading desk.
Okay, I'm turning red.
You are? Okay. Yes, you are, aren't you? Okay. All right.
Why can't you?
Could you shed some light over why we can't carry over the limit? Could I? No, I didn't make the policy, so I really cannot. I can just tell you how it is. And why, it's like saying, why is Social Security pay as you go and not, basically like a 401k in your account? I mean, you're paying taxes, why can't that be in your account? So it was a philosophical decision made by the policymakers, for whatever reason, and that's how it is. So I'm sorry, I really don't. If you're matching maxing your 401k contributions, IRA contributions, is it still necessary to have another savings account as part of your bank account? Is it still necessary? Well, that's for you to determine, right? I mean, more is always better than less. And if you believe in the principle of insatiation, that we prefer more to less, then yes, if you can afford to have another savings account or another investment account or whatever, great, more power to you, right? It's not to say that, oh, I'm not going to do it. No, you should never say that. So if you have other separate brokerage accounts, you have, do whatever you can, and as long as you can never have too much, right? You can always try to be more prudent and save more money because you don't know at the end of the day how you might need money as you get older. So that's always a good idea. So would a traditional IRA be a better option if I was going to retire and have no income when I, yes, I mean, so the question is true, would a traditional IRA be a better option if I were going to retire and have no income when I start to withdraw? Yeah, if you're in the lowest possible tax bracket, then yeah, that's clearly you're going to pay less in taxes at that point because let's say your income is zero at that point, you're not paying taxes. So this is going to, well, actually, let me think. It's still not going to be good enough because it depends on how much your total is at the, so let's say you have no income at 60, right? So let's play this thought exercise. And let's say your traditional IRA has $1 million in it. So that still puts you at $1 million of taxable income, even with anything else in it. So it's still going to be, so now if you had $100,000 in your account or $200,000, then it may be, worth thinking about. But really, it's not. But if you're talking about a relatively large amount, which is like $500,000 plus or $1 million plus account, which is what we hope to, with 30 years of growth in the account, then it's still you're going to be at the top tax bracket anyway with that kind of income. So. We are good. What if you make millions a year? Hey, if you make millions a year, you don't need any of this stuff, right? Then all this is moot. You can just pack up and leave right now because it doesn't matter. If you're worth $10 million, what do you care about this measly amounts? You'll be sunning yourself in a sunny place somewhere, right? So this is for those of us who will not have many millions in our bank account. That's what we're talking about. But
Mr. Martin, there was a request from students to have a TVM opened on Tuesday, a TVM portion of exam, and they're asking if it's possible.
you're putting me on the spot right now,
Sorry.
right?
Okay, I'll answer
now,
it.
I have no idea. You tell me, what do you think? As one of your final executive decisions before you graduate.
Let's do a poll.
Oh, God. Can we do this later?
Yes.
This is not class time, okay. You can take a poll, you can do whatever, but let's do it after class. All right, so there are these other types of IRAs. I'm not going to look it over. These are just lists and things, so they're not very easy to understand. But here's an action plan that I would recommend. Start a Roth IRA as soon as possible. Get into the habit of contributing whatever you can, whatever the amount every month. Make sure you sign your work-related 401k and get your employer to contribute the maximum amount. That's another thing you should do. Get into your 401 and Roth IRA accounts from time to time and adjust the allocation. This is the critical piece. Remember we talked about Save More Tomorrow and the problem, that behavioral bias that most of us have, which is that we never go in and adjust the thing. Whatever it is set to as default is what most people leave it at. They don't touch it. And that's wrong because you're not really taking maximum advantage of the market and timing. So you need to, unless you are privileged to be in one of those situations where it's done for you, you will have to go in at least once a year and adjust where money is going and maybe make those changes to move it into different portfolios or different kinds of funds, mutual funds and so on. Check your employer's vesting schedule and plan your career move. So those are the 4 retirement-related advice that really you need to pay attention to. That's FAQs, you can look at that. These have been put together with questions I've been asked over the years. Okay, so this is one thing I want to talk about a little bit. So can we improve people's your and my savings behavior? We've already seen one way, right? We've already seen one way, which is the study that we talked about in the prior class about Saving More Tomorrow, done by a couple of economists from Chicago, and it seems to have very good effects so far in all the data that has been collected in that. This is another one. This is another study that has been done on how to improve. So the research question here was, well, is there a way we can encourage people to save more in retirement? And the hypothesis of this study, which was published in Journal of Marketing Research, was that the hypothesis was that we as individuals don't contribute to our retirement accounts as much as we should, or maybe not at all, is because we don't really connect to our future selves. So that was the hypothesis. This is not me, this is the study we're talking about. So the researchers hypothesized that maybe one reason why we don't do what we should be doing is because we don't really, it's hard for us to imagine what life is going to be like at 65. Think about it. You guys in your 20s, you believe in invincibility, you know that you're going to be alive forever, you're not going to get old, you're just going to be like the way you are. And I know this because I was once like you and believed exactly that. But then here I am. So, so the thing is that we don't, so the idea is that we don't do it because it's hard for us to project ourselves at 65 and think what it might be like, and therefore we just put it away. We just don't deal with it, right? We have other things to spend our money on. That's something that's so far away that it's beyond the realm of even thinking about. We don't worry about it. We just blissfully, we are unaware, and we stay like that, and so on and so forth. So these guys said, okay, what if we can simulate a way for people to connect with their future selves? So the idea was that they created a age-rendered picture. So they recruited participants in this study, all in their 20s and 30s, and they age-rendered their current pictures to what they might look like at 65. So think of yourself, each one of you, age-rendered by, there's software now that can do that for you. And to make it look like what you would look like at 65 or 60 or whatever age. And so they had this trial group and then a control group. okay, which is what you do, how you do these studies. Pretty much, similar sample, but the trial group got to see both their current pictures and their age-rendered future selves. Okay, so that was generated by a computer. So you submitted all your pictures in different views, and then that was used by the computer to simulate what you would look like at 60 or 65. The other group, the control group, just saw their present pictures and not the age-rendered picture. Okay, not the age-rendered picture. So one group got to see both the current and their future selves. The other group got to see just their current selves and not the future selves. And then it turns out that the group that got to see their future selves really statistically showed a much higher inclination to start a retirement account or behave in a way that you want to than the control group that didn't show that kind of a desire in any significant way. But then the question was, well, what if it's not really showing your age-rendered picture, but any old picture? So you show me a picture of an older guy or older person, and I'm going to feel like that, right? Any old picture will do. Just give me a 60-year-old and it'll work. So they tried it. They actually showed in one group their own pictures rendered, and the other just randomly selected older people's pictures. And it turned out that there was a difference between when you showed your own pictures versus any old picture off the street. So the conclusion was, and this was a Journal of Marketing Research is a pretty good journal, and so the conclusion was that there is something to be said for creating that personal connection between your present self and your future self to get people to think about retirement and doing the right things for retirement and stuff. So that was basically the sum of this study. Okay? And this is any questions? Any new one? Is there an IRA with a variable universal combination of Roth and traditional? No, there isn't, not to my knowledge at least. But there doesn't need to be, because the point is that either if one is, it's not like a hedging strategy where you're thinking, maybe it's going to be one way for me or versus the other. So people usually know by the time they're 2025 what their career path is going to look like. So there's no question of hedging your bets and having both. You might as well have one or the other. And for people here in this classroom, I think Roth is the clear favorite. Now, there's one question that does come up, not for you guys so much, but older people who have had their traditional IRA for X number of years and want to now convert that traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. And the question is it beneficial for them to do so? And the answer is it depends, which is always the best answer, right? It depends, because when you take a traditional IRA and you try to convert it to a Roth IRA, you're allowed to do so. However, you still have to pay back taxes and penalty to break into it and so clear all this backlog before you can put the rest of the money in a Roth IRA. And the question is that worth it? And the question, and so the general rule of thumb is if you've had a traditional IRA for about 10 plus years, 10 to 12 years or more, it's not worthwhile financially to break that at this stage and roll it over into a Roth IRA. You might as well leave it as a traditional IRA and continue on. So that's the one question that comes up. Do investment IRA gains, dividends, etc., count as income when you want to withdraw? So everything that does, so in a traditional IRA, everything in that account is taxable. Every bit is taxable in a traditional IRA because you haven't paid taxes on it. It's pre-tax money and pre-tax growth. So the whole amount that it grows to is taxable. That's the big rub with the traditional IRA, is that at the end, if the growth and everything you've put in together is $1 million, everything included, that's your amount, then that $1 million is taxable income at that point. Okay? Whereas in a Roth IRA, you saw the example that whatever is growing internally is is not, well, it is taxable if you break out of it before you're 60, but it's not if you wait till the right time to get into it, then nothing is taxable. So that's sort of the difference. All right, so I really, this is it. So I've answered most of your questions. We can, if there's some more that come up, we'll get to it. But great, so we'll finish a little early today. That's my retirement lecture, and I'll see you for close-up discussions, my closing out thoughts on Wednesday.